more pressure with you looking at me. Our live show is going to be conducted without either of us looking at each other. Welcome to Reanimated, episode 135. This episode brought to you by sight. Because HA and I can see each other, and that is weird because we usually do this on Skype.
It's true. It's also brought to you by beer. Because we're actually able to drink our beer live.
And usually we record at the crack of dawn, Western time, and today we're doing this in the afternoon. And so most afternoon podcasts for Reanimated are fueled by booze.
That's true.
And so this episode is brought to you by St. Florian's local brewery and Anderson Valley Brewery from Mendocino County. So thank you, beer. However, so we had mentioned that last time we were going to be talking about season 6 of The Walking Dead this time around, and so we are going to be digging into the hour-long season opener and episode 2 of that season. But first, we wanted to also share a very disturbing little video that we've discovered on Facebook, and it's hard to exactly tell where it's from or what it is, but what it is certainly is disturbing.
Yeah, if we get more detail, we'll share that with you. But I'm impressed with these little zombie cosplayers. So it's a dad, I think, and perhaps his 2 daughters.
Let's hope that that's their relationship.
I think that is what it is. But maybe 4 and 5 are the ages of the kids. And man, that 5-year-old zombie walk is pretty spot on. And she's doing a pretty good job.
Greg Nicotero is he's got his scouts going and contacting this family because they were pulling it off for sure.
These may be Greg Nicotero's kids, but for all we know, that is Greg Nicotero.
Actually, no, Greg Nicotero's kids were in an episode in season 8, season 7.
No, it's true. I'm just being silly.
And they're like tweens or teenagers.
But these kids are freaking awesome, so check it out. We'll put it up in the show notes.
Yeah. This episode also brought to you with less of us talking over each other because we can see when we're talking, and so we shouldn't do the old double talk and one microphone.
True.
So I guess we'll just dig right into it. We just 10 minutes ago finished watching the season opener of season 6, and so we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to take a little break that'll be transparent to our listeners, watch the second episode, and then we will talk about that. So, HA, what's your major takeaway from, what was that episode called? For the first time all over again or something along those lines?
Yeah, something like that.
It picks up right where the season ender for season 5, the season finale ended, with the death of Reg and the death of Pete and the reintroduction of Morgan to Alexandria. But this episode starts very abruptly, and it's all about setting up this enormous set piece.
Correct.
So, yeah, what's your major takeaway, though, from the premiere?
My major takeaway is that whoever did Rick's butterfly bandages for every single one of the scenes that are in current time and real time and the scenes in the flashbacks, come on, that person deserves a medal. Those butterfly bandages were awesome.
Meticulously placed hopefully in the same spot on his. They could have been moving around because honestly, there's about 30 of them, and who can keep count?
I was watching, and whoever was doing those bandages was definitely paying very close attention to what they had been doing. So, hats off to you, makeup artist.
All I know is when they had to get peeled off of his stubble, that
must have sucked.
Must have been so painful because not only do you have. I mean, if it was for real, obviously he's putting these over makeup, but if you had butterfly bandages over with hopefully stitches on stubble, and then you're peeling them off every day, I cannot imagine. However.
But that aside, my other takeaway from this episode, maybe because we were watching on this particular television and the high definition quality of it does have a bit of a soap opera feeling. Vibe.
It's that crispness and the lighting, everything kind of feels like you're on a set.
It's usually I watch almost everything on my laptop, which definitely doesn't have quite this definition. So that, and maybe it was this episode as well, because people walking into a hospital, just kind of entering the room and dropping huge emotional storytelling bombs upon other characters. I don't know. That was the other takeaway I had. I mean, I don't think that there's any mistake. I don't think it's coincidence that Rick has a few governor vibes going on in this episode. And I think that's quite deliberate in terms of the storytelling and how they're unfolding the Alexandria storyline here, just in the decisions he has to make and his actions in general.
When we left Rick at the end of season 5, he had just had his middle of the street brawl with Pete the surgeon, where he doesn't come across as the good guy, despite the fact that he's fighting a guy who beats his wife and kids in the zombie apocalypse. Like, the least necessary thing to do in the zombie apocalypse, be a domestic abuser. So somehow he manages to come out on the bottom of that morality battle,
despite his really long battle with that crazy zombie that had gotten in through the gate. I mean, that thing took forever.
Yes. But he's not at the top of his Rick is the guy, the leader for us kind of scale. He's probably somewhere towards the bottom / middle. I mean, he's also been batshit insane at the prison by this point. So we know that Rick is not hinged. At best, he is 50% hinged at any time. And his appearance now is somehow more authoritative. Like, the beginning of this episode starts with him giving a speech, and then events quickly start to unfold, even though the audience doesn't really know what's going on. And there's all these people on screen that we've never met before, who we assume are Alexandrians, that we just...
Could be, could not.
Who knows?
Don't know.
It's an hour-long episode, and it goes on to introduce some new characters in Alexandria, 3 specifically, who were away on a supply run, but who are recognizable. At least Heath is super recognizable from the books. He was one of the scouts from the comic books. And so
great hair.
With great hair game, as Eugene commends him on. And so he shows up, and then we have several other people, including... This episode, if nobody else, is kind of the episode of Ethan Embry, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he goes from Can't Hardly Wait to Alexandria.
I would say he goes from Empire Records.
Empire Records to Can't Hardly Wait
okay.
to Alexandria. His hairline's having some problems, so of course, where else can you cast such a person?
Well, he was also in a Showtime cop show about a local politician who was in with the Irish mob in somewhere in the Northeast. But in that, he was probably a good 40 pounds heavier than he is in this, so he's looking pretty good. He's holding his own. But so Ethan Embry plays a guy called Carter, who was apparently Reg's apprentice when they were building the walls. But he's also...
But he's kind of a new character. We've never seen him before.
Never seen this guy before.
They do make comments about the fact that he was on some work crew, I think, to try to make the audience understand that he's been part of Alexandria, but no, he was not. He wasn't.
And we commented at the end of our reviews of last season that, at the big town hall meeting, there's only 18 people there. The town doesn't seem that big. We know that there's kids, so maybe some people are home with kids.
We know that takes up a lot of time. And
they don't come to the murder meeting like everybody else. But suddenly there's some scenes in this episode where there's 40 people in a living room, and we're like, who are all these people? And Carter, this guy Carter, who's played by Ethan Embry, is super vocal, and he's kind of he's the one who's bucking the let's all get with Rick trend.
Yeah. There's also a little bit of a dynamic going on here where Rick is being faced with his past. I mean, Morgan has made a pretty big splash in terms of how he has come back into Alexandria and into Rick's life, and Rick doesn't fully trust him. I mean, obviously the last time Rick saw Morgan he was personally batshit crazy, so Rick now understands a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Now, and Morgan and Rick definitely have this history where they encountered each other right at the beginning of this whole thing, and Rick is having to make decisions, and he's being questioned a lot by Morgan about the decisions that he's making. And that, I mean, I can understand why Rick's having some hard times right now.
And for people who've been watching the show currently, where it is now at the end of season 7, we're all kind of used to Morgan's proselytizing his new philosophy. At this point, they're introducing it in a kind of a quieter way. He's not. He does tend to say, "Look, there's probably another way to do this," but he's not as forthright as he becomes later. So it's.
I think he's much more in your face as the seasons go by.
Yeah, and it's only 2 seasons really that we've had to be with him as this new disciple of Eastern philosophy, but it gets old pretty quick. So he does start off pretty quietly, and I like that actually. It's kind of like, yeah, you know what, you're the new kid in town. You can't just come in and be like, hey guys, pacifism, it's the way of the future.
I do like how Rick is questioning where he learned his staff fighting skills, and Morgan is...
Because it comes out of nowhere.
It does, and Morgan is equally mysterious about it. And, for those who have watched the show, you kind of know what's coming, but in this case, we don't know that yet.
Right.
So I kind of like how they start to plant the seeds for that, or those episodes later on.
But you're making a great point, though. I'm saying this is the episode of Carter just because this is a character who comes out of nowhere. But it's also an episode of Morgan. Morgan has some great lines, makes some great points, and his reintroduction is one that leaves you liking him, I feel like. He comes back and you're like, yeah, he's an asset.
Yeah. And that's not something I thought I would say about Morgan, at least based upon when they left him the last time, which was...
Well, he was definitely a liability.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're correct. I mean, it is the episode of Carter, and in some ways I feel like Carter represents the Alexandria community a little bit, because he is sort of, I mean, so we can surmise, he is a little bit of the, I don't know what you would even call him, like the next Reg.
Like, I mean, Reg was an aisle crosser. Reg was a compromiser.
Right.
This guy is something else. He's like the new Pete almost.
But he
less
thinks,
dickish.
Less dickish, but he thinks he's the new Reg, and so he thinks he's speaking for the community. And also, you have to remember that this community is a community with blinders on. They've been kind of, I don't want to say they've been led along the primrose path, but that's kind of how it feels, because they don't think that they have to fight. They have a little bit of a different attitude in general than everybody else in this entire world does, that this is a survival, this is a game of survival. And I don't know, like Carter feels somehow like Rick has brought in the bad, like in this community right now. Like he's kind of blaming Rick for all the stuff that's going on, even though honestly it wasn't anything that Rick was doing. It was just sort of the reality of the situation. But Carter is, I think, in some ways representing this community that doesn't want to change, and partly why they don't want to change is because it's terrifying to really admit that this is what the world is like at this point.
Carter is definitely an anachronistic point of view, because that's what Rick's group all thinks of them. They're this like sheltered group that haven't had to really deal with reality. Whether or not, we all believe that, it's certainly, if you saw a guy like Rick in your neighborhood today, waving the gun, beating up the guy who's abusing his wife, which is something that you wouldn't do, even though you might agree with it on some level. It's vigilantism, in this story at least, it's frowned upon. He is a societal pariah from Carter's perspective, at least at first.
True.
So we go through some growing pains for Rick's vision and his leadership of the group, but we also have, oh my god, this episode was also the episode of flashbacks.
There was too many flashbacks.
All of these black and white scenes that go back, and so that helps to introduce some of these people like Heath and his other 2 friends whose names I've already forgotten. One of them I think is still on the show. Actually, Heath is, well... let's leave that for the spoilers.
Yeah. Nice. You may have to edit that out.
Oh, I edited everything out. But so other things that are introduced in this episode are this insane plan that is already underway. Like putting this episode together in retrospect, you kind of have to put it together in retrospect, because they show it to you sort of as it's happening and what led up to it happening. And so the last flashback happens maybe 5-10 minutes before the end of the episode, and by that point you're finally caught up, and it's kind of exhausting.
It is this whole episode is exhausting. As a series premiere, I really have to question a little bit the direction that they took in this.
I love the scope of the problem they're facing.
No, it's amazing. And just for those of you who have not yet seen it, this is Rick and Morgan discover that there's this huge quarry that has been keeping a giant herd of walkers. And this has, in a way, been protecting the community of Alexandria from the big herds that other communities have faced. And unfortunately, the quarry itself has been breached, and so they're going to start walking out, and so they have to figure out a plan. And there's like a direct line to Alexandria from the quarry, so they have to somehow. So they have to come up with this big, massive plan to keep this herd of walkers, which, I mean, there's a lot of the walkers. I mean, the whole, CG piece of this was hard to, keep up with it.
And the CG wasn't
good.
It wasn't good. It was fine. It got across the scope. It got across the fact that they had thousands of zombies to deal with. But it was also, not the best. It's probably, I don't know if this might have been the most zombies on screen ever.
I don't know about that, but it was still a lot.
It was a lot. I mean, maybe the slaughter yards.
I feel like Atlanta had quite a few on screen.
Yeah. Either way, we've got thousands of zombies coming down the road, and this plan that is complexity and layers upon layers with poor bored Daryl on his motorcycle for hours at a time.
Daryl looks so bored, and he's even driving his motorcycle one-armed, and his other arm is slack, just kind of hanging down.
Oh God, just kill me. Honestly, this episode, Daryl, they threw him some bones of dialogue, you know what, Rick, I really think I should be out in the wilds looking for new members of our community, because that would be this BS.
It's no, Daryl, you just have to drive in front of the herd of zombies.
Yeah, dude, just shut up. All you're going to do this whole episode is drive and maybe shoot a crossbow bolt at one zombie one time. This is not your episode. This is Carter and Morgan and, Rosita is where's Rosita? Nowhere to be seen in this episode. Nowhere. But, there's 12 people, as Eugene tells Heath. So they still have this huge core cast. There's no way to keep them all together. One other person that we are reunited with in this ridiculous scene that you already alluded to is Tara. We left her with a massive head injury and unconscious, not sure if she would ever wake up. And Pete wasn't dealing with her, and Pete's never going to deal with her now because he has a bullet in his face. But she wakes up. Glenn and Nicholas come in from the woods, looking kind of ridiculous. That was the worst part of the end of last season, was their stupid fight in the forest. And
they have the makeup to show for it. Glenn has circles under his eyes that.
He's been
just
shot
go on forever.
He's been shot, and you know what? The rest of this episode, he doesn't even have all the butterfly bandages that Rick had just from being thrown through a glass window.
No. But you know what? I do feel like Rick's butterfly bandages serve a purpose, because every flashback, when you see that there's a ton of them, it's a flashback, and you can kind of gauge how long it's been.
And they gradually disappear.
They do, and eventually he only has maybe 5 on his face as opposed to 50. So,
But he still looks more banged up by the end of this episode. When we catch up to current time, quote unquote, in this episode, he still looks more banged up than Glenn does, who has been in this ridiculous, life-threatening knuckle duster fight. Plus, he's been shot. Plus, he's been there were 3 zombies on him at one point out in the forest.
I know, and I also have to say this: if you had actually been through all the stuff that Glenn went through, his super weird loyalty to Nicholas, to me, is absolutely bizarre. I don't know that you would ever trust this person ever, but yet he seems to, and he just seems to take on this very paternal.
You know what it is? It's a too much of a north-facing moral compass.
I know, but it still, to me, doesn't make sense, because this is a world where you need to survive, and this is somebody that let him down and put his life in danger, and also deliberately and without question tried to kill him, and then you're bringing him in and you're training him and trusting him around the people that you care about most. I just don't feel like that is a realistic
and a lot
scenario.
Of these interactions he's having with Nicholas are you're not ready, but I'll let you know when you are. He's had these exact conversations with this character in season 5.
Of course he did. That's what bothers me so much about this, that somehow you're supposed to believe that something has changed.
All that's changed was that he beat Nicholas's ass and then didn't shoot him. I mean, and maybe that would be enough for for a normal person to change their stripes.
Yeah.
But this is The Walking Dead, so.
Yeah. And along that line, we do have a little conversation between Maggie and Tara, which, we didn't see any of this on screen, but apparently Maggie is fully aware of what happened between Glenn and Nicholas and fills Tara in. And then is like, Tara, your family, and gives her a big hug. It's like so weird. You mean
more to me than anybody else. Well, it's partially, she says to Tara, like, hey, you and I were on the opposite sides of the battlefield on the worst day of my life. When her sister, not her sister, when her dad was killed.
Yeah.
And so she's saying, look, if you can become my friend, so can Nicholas become Glenn's friend. But, yeah, I guess, there's luck of the draw on the enemies that you choose to bring into your circle. And you know what? That was Glenn doing that too. So in a way, this is kind of consistent.
Full circle, I guess. Yeah.
It's just that I think we all know that Nicholas isn't worth it.
No.
So that's just frustrating to watch that still going on, and they're still playing that out. Nicholas kind of holds his own. They have a fight in the storefront with the storefront zombies, with Heath, Glenn, and Nicholas. And Nicholas is sort of sidelined. Glenn is like, you just stay over there and don't mess with it. Don't touch anything. But he gets mixed in and he does okay.
He does all right.
Honestly, that part, that's the only part of the show in a way that I'm like, did we really need this? Did we really need this? It's like a sidebar.
Yeah.
All it really does is show you that Nicholas and Glenn are getting better together.
Yeah.
But do we care enough?
I don't know. We also don't really care about Rick and Ron and...
Oh, that whole family?
That whole family, which just never seems to go away.
But this is us in hindsight hating this family.
No, I didn't really like them from the get-go. I was kind of like, what is Rick getting involved in? This is just a kind of a strange situation. And, watching this in hindsight, there's also a little scene where Rick is telling Morgan that he should come and live with them. And it immediately flashes to Michonne, which of course we know, well, now, that they eventually get together. And I feel like that was sort of laying the seeds for that, probably, that relationship.
And I think it might be a nod to the fact that Morgan and Michonne in the comic books do get together also.
Yeah, they do, but, that's not where they go. As we've said, they kind of had to make a choice for Rick here in the series, and there wasn't, in terms of people, that would be his equal.
No mas Andrea.
I know. So, anyway, we got that going on, and this wonderful little family, Ron, and I'm blanking on this woman's name, which is terrible.
Jessie, I think is her name. And then her other son is
Sam. And there was also the moral choice here where, Rick is trying to, I don't want to say he's trying to school Ron, but he kind of is. And, it's also he gets
saves
schooled.
Ron's life. Like
he does.
There's no he dives on him and stops him from running over a cliff because apparently Ron's an idiot and he's about to run over a cliff. So Rick has to first dive on him, risking injury to himself.
Yeah.
But then he has to also kill two zombies. Well, actually, two of them walk over the cliff by themselves. He kills one, and Morgan kills the fourth.
Right.
They saved Ron's life.
They did, but also they wouldn't have been out there, and Ron wouldn't have been out there if they hadn't decided to bring Pete's body out. And so that was the moral choice.
That was Deanna's choice.
That too, but Rick is the one who brought it up.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to bury this sinner within the city walls. It's like
that is super dumb,
and also dumb in other ways because it's kind of like, guys, you got a lot of energy to expend. Really, you're going to expend it on this? Come on.
Right.
Like, we're going to put ourselves at risk going outside the walls to bury a body of a murderer? Like...
Just dump him in a ditch,
Like, whatever you're going to do, do we really need to bring him all the way to the quarry to bury him?
Feed the raccoons.
Right, something.
Yeah, but so Ron is super, what's the word teenagers are? Sullen.
Angsty.
Yes, angsty, sullen. Rick pulls him aside when he's, walking back. He's like, I'm going to walk home. Because he'd walked all the way out there somehow. This kid who's probably never been outside the walls by himself before has walked miles after Rick and Morgan to see where his dad's going to get buried. I get the motivation. I just don't think he definitely doesn't have the tools or the skills to do it. And he would be shitting himself the entire time.
Yeah, but, they kind of set it up at the graveyard where he sees that they're going to take his dad's body out. So maybe he was motivated in that way.
Still.
I know. Well, and that's also why he got into trouble, like, with the walkers already.
Yeah,
he didn't
so
know what he was doing.
He was on death's door. Rick bails him out, and then Rick pulls him aside and says, "You're going to die out here. Don't come back out here. I'll teach you how to survive, but you can't come out here or you'll die, and it won't be fun."
Right.
And he pulls him in a way like, he puts his hands on him. And then later in the episode, we have to sit through a lecture from Jesse that none of us believe, I assume. I don't know. Maybe there's people in the audience who are like, yeah, this kid is the son of an abusive father, and so he's never going to respond to this sort of lecture. And the grabbing him by the arm when he's about to walk into the zombie-infested forest.
Yeah, but you know what? Even when, and we, by the way, we decided to, like, go back to watch this again because we were both like, wait, did he even touch him? Because it wasn't totally clear.
No, it's not like both hands.
It's not both hands, and it's honestly more of a reactive touching of him in, like, getting him away from the edge of the quarry with the walkers. I don't feel like he was very forceful about it. It wasn't like he was holding him by the forearms while he was lecturing him or anything weird like that. I just feel like it was a very reactive thing, but not like...
But the
I don't know.
Getting lectured by Jesse at that point, I'm like, dude, he's already bailed you out from the husband who was going to murder you, probably.
Yeah. No, he was. He was going to murder her.
Eventually. It's just... Look, none of us think that Rick is an angel.
No.
But when he gets lectured like this, we're like, come on. This is not the lecture he needs. He needs the lecture that's like, try not to murder so many people. Not the lecture that is, I'm trying to protect your son from certain death.
Yeah.
Anyway. So it's frustrating. So much of this relationship where, the show wants us to ship Jesse and Rick because he's already kissed her. And, he's like, he's dating again. Carl should be super psyched.
I know.
But it's not. It's just. It's a chore. This whole relationship, this whole thing, is a chore, and I don't like to deal with it.
No, me neither. Also, other important things in this episode is the exchange between Carol and Morgan.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good because he sees right through her magical, camouflage.
Whatever weird persona she's been putting up, like the little Stepford wife thing she's been doing. Morgan is not buying into it and kind of keeps asking her questions that make her uncomfortable. Like, were you a cop with Rick?
Yep. And
all sorts of fun stuff like that. And she blows him off very nicely.
Aren't you sweet?
Oh.
Which is, P.S. I will stab you. This is great. It sets up their antagonistic relationship. And now going into where we are in the show right now, they have a whole different kind of relationship.
They do.
Their relationship is actually one of the most interesting things about the show.
I think so too. And also, Carol's one of my favorite characters generally, both in like the comics as well as the show. And part of why it's interesting is just that she evolves in a way that you don't see. And in a way that makes sense to me, more so than other characters have, but especially within the Walking Dead television series, she evolves in a way that is pretty badass, generally. Yeah. So I kind of like to see, I forgot about that exchange between them, and it really made me nostalgic. I'm like, oh gosh, I totally forgot about this.
So she's totally playing up still the housewife, the baker thing in this episode.
Pay no attention to me.
Yeah. Oh golly, that sounds like a very bad situation out at the quarry. And it's fun to see someone be like, I'm calling bullshit on this. I can tell that you're more than what you make yourself out to be. So it's cool that Morgan isn't just this guy who has managed to learn Aikido off screen. He's also insightful, and he's a great new addition to the cast.
A new old addition to the cast.
A new old addition to the cast. I mean, he's actually like an entirely new character. Before he was like concerned dad. His wife was wandering around as a zombie. He didn't know how to deal with her. Like, this is a completely different person now.
True. And I feel like I do, even though I was upset about how we came back to Morgan, they've even managed to kind of turn a little bit of what he was before, and make you view it with a sense of humor, to the point where he and Michonne are joking about whether she stole an energy bar from him or not. And she did.
But she says she didn't. That's some good tension relieving comedy too, right there. That's good. So we also, throughout the course of this episode, we've got Carter giving Rick a bunch of grief about his plan being too dangerous. Rick saying, look, I know it's dangerous, but the actual danger is that the zombies will overrun Alexandria, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, Rick's plan works. Hey, what a surprise. And Carter has to eat crow and say, Rick, you were right, man. Handshake, bro. I'm going to go take point.
Yep, with my receding hairline. I'm going to take point.
Oh, I'm going to take point, and I'll look like a real champ running through the woods ahead of everybody else and then getting my face eaten.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of knew it was coming.
Well, as soon as you say, Rick, you were right.
Yeah, like we knew that was something bad was going to happen.
And you're like a character who's never been seen on screen or spoken until this episode. Right. And then you're being humble and saying like, oh man, you really taught me a lesson today. Guess what? It's the end of your time on The Walking Dead. So this episode, we haven't mentioned at all, is like a trifecta dream team of Scott Gimple and Negrete guy wrote it together.
Greg Nicotero?
No, Nicotero directed it. It was sorry. Gimple and Negrete.
Yep.
Who has a lot of credits on the show too. But whenever Gimple and Nicotero get together,
Negrete, yep.
There's a lot of recognizable things happening. I wouldn't call them tropes, but this show is a little bit predictable when you look at it as a whole. And so when you have people like, well, I'll just say maybe Glenn is acting in a way that seems like his moral compass is too much aligned. Maybe he might be in trouble. Who knows? Certainly when Carter is like, no, you're bad. Oh, wait a second. I'm going to think about this for a minute. Okay, no, you're good. Well, that's also not great for any character on this show.
That's true. Also, just in terms of the effects and the walkers that show up, this is such a Nicotero episode. Just in the beginning, like he's really showcasing all the makeup, and you see some tropey walkers coming in through there right from the beginning.
There's one who kind of looks like a clown.
Yeah,
like he's got different colored hair.
Yep, there's that guy. There's so many in this particular episode.
Is that one of those celebrity zombies?
Yeah. And then there's, okay. I think there's a few in this particular episode, including the one that bites Carter's face. There's definitely a few in here that really are looking familiar to me, so probably have been popping up other places.
This episode has so many zombies on screen, but it also has a lot of just like, all right, here's just a person with a lot of white powder and some blood on their face and really old clothes. Yeah. Like they have some with super prosthetics, and then some that are just like, I'm filler, just don't look at me too closely. Concentrate on the guy with the face that's falling off. I'm not that guy.
But I will also say that watching it on this television compared to watching it on the laptop, very different experience, because I feel like some of that is more easily, you can miss it a little bit more easily on the laptop. This is a little bit too high definition to be able to give it a pass.
So I don't know if I need to say that this is like a 55-inch Samsung HD TV. I tend to watch these episodes on a computer monitor also. In fairly decent resolution.
Do you also watch these on your computer monitor because your significant other doesn't want to watch them? Because that's why I watch them on my laptop.
I cannot have the sounds of flesh eating around my children.
That makes sense.
So I watch it with my headphones and on the computer.
I don't know. It builds character.
Yeah.
From what I hear.
So
that's the word on the street.
How can we round out this episode? Essentially, the plan is the extremely complex plan that has colors and routes and turns
flare
and flare guns. It all goes off great, considering they weren't planning on running it today. That first scene where they're like, okay, let's lead them away from the quarry, and there's all those cars parked along the sides.
Yeah.
Do you think those cars were there beforehand? It kind of seems to suggest that they had gone and put all those cars there.
No, it felt like they planned that. I felt like they set it up.
Where the hell did they get all the gas or that many running cars?
Alexandria seems to have a lot of resources that we don't know about, so that's kind of what I thought.
Fair enough. It's kind of bananas. They were planning on doing it the next day. The flare shooting thing kind of bothered me in that when they're at the curve, the corner in the road where they're trying to get them to switch directions, the zombies, and they keep shooting flares off. It just seems like every flare they shoot is only really should be directing their attention to where they don't want them to go.
Right.
because instead of shooting off the flares and making the noise down the road, they're doing it right at the corner.
And also the sound of the flares, it's the sound that's coming out of the flare guns. It seems like it would attract them.
That's the loudest thing. It's not like they're shooting Roman candles or fireworks.
Like the sound, if it was sort of somehow exploding up at the sky, it does explode, but it's not as loud as when they shoot it out of the flare guns.
Right.
So that's kind of a bother.
Romero's Land of the Dead. We watched this.
Yes.
They had this right. They were doing sky flowers, whatever they called it. Or no, that's from Game of Thrones.
Same idea, though.
But yes. You do something that's going to attract the attention where you want them to go, not like shooting a flare gun, during the day, no less.
Yeah, they're not going to see anything.
No, the zombies aren't going to be watching for this tiny speck of bright light over in the corner. They're going to be going for the smoke and the bang, I was just like, well, this is disappointing.
And speaking of Game of Thrones, the walker that bites Carter's face looks a lot like a White Walker for some reason. So I thought it might be a little bit of an homage, but maybe
Poor
not.
Carter. Poor Ethan Embry. Ethan Embry, though, did manage to get onto Talking Dead after this episode because... he's a good dude. I think he was a fan of the show also. He was just super psyched.
Maybe he just wanted to be on this for
He's like, look, I'm a well-known actor. I can come and do 40 speaking lines and you can kill me off at the end of the episode. I don't even care. I'm Ethan Embry and you know what? You guys wish.
Yep.
Episode ends with loud blaring horn noise drawing all of these zombies off the path.
Don't know where it's coming from. Could be coming from home.
Who knows? This is kind of the beginning of the problem for this season for me, which is they set up this enormous set piece in the season premiere, and then it's not resolved by the end of the pilot, and you're like, well, I don't know. Would it have been cool if they had resolved the big problem in the pilot? Maybe we want to have a new problem to solve after this. But I feel like this season, the first half of the season, is all this same problem, or a series of problems. And we'll get to what the next problem is in the next part of this episode. But for now, that's it for the season premiere.
I think so.
Okay. JSS. We're fresh off the presses of having watched episode 2, season 6. This is our Enid origin story, is kind of how this episode starts.
Yeah, it's an interesting origin story, one that you would expect in this world, I kind of feel.
I mean, it's not the true origin. Like, we don't know what she's been through with her parents. We know that her parents don't do so well. It looks like they managed to kill 2 zombies, but they were come at from 2 directions by 5 and just didn't pull it off. So
yeah, and she was left alone
and watched her. Like, we see her watching her mom getting eaten.
Right,
and that's pretty grim. I mean, that's about as grim as it gets.
Yeah, that's not a fun time.
And so she then survives by killing lovable tortoises, and she becomes obsessed with carving the initials JSS into her hand.
She steals Letterman sweaters.
Off of zombies.
Yep.
But that's what you got to do to survive. So by the time she gets to Alexandria, she is...
damaged goods.
A whole different kind of sort of person. She almost doesn't go in. And then later in this episode, there is a weird moment where she seems to allude that she is a wolf.
I don't think she alludes. She totally confesses, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But the person she confesses to just ignores it.
But it also makes no sense, because they have the photographs. They have the backpack. That's why they're there.
It's why they're there, but maybe they had an inside man as well. Maybe they knew everything about that, and then they kind of were ignoring it, and then they had new information, which made it more, immediate for them.
I think that this was just a mistake in the script, where they weren't sure what they were saying, or they weren't sure how it was going to be interpreted when she said this. I think maybe what she was referring to was, this place is too large to defend. You can come at it from too many directions. And when she loses her parents, it's because they come at her from 2 different directions.
Maybe it's as simple as that.
I think that could be the most simple answer, because when it comes to the wolves, they don't seem to have guile, they set traps that don't really make sense given their kind of MO, which is be crazy.
Well, crazy and just totally focused upon your immediate survival, which that's kind of what the wolves do. And it's what they're implying that she does with the eating of the tortoise specifically, and the stealing of the Letterman sweater.
Yeah.
But you know.
So Enid makes it to Alexandria. I think that's just everything that happens before the credits, and then we get into a Carol shopping trip that transitions pretty quickly into the wolf thing that we're obviously is the main part of this episode is the wolf invasion of Alexandria. And this is the ongoing problem with this season, which is the season premiere starts with this giant set piece of the zombie herd that they are trying to shepherd.
It's true.
But we still don't have any kind of resolution for that at the end of episode 2.
That's true. I also admit that I forgot that I knew that this was sort of what was coming in this episode, but it did catch me by surprise because I forgot how it all sort of came to pass.
Frankly, it's a great intro. I mean, the thing is, when you combine this with the zombie herd, it's like, oh, another thing? It's kind of like, do we need this many problems right now in the show? But your reaction when Shelley gets chopped down by the wolf was pretty good. It was a gasp, ladies and gentlemen. H.A. Conrad gasped.
I did, because I totally forgot that even happened. Like, I remembered there was some retribution for the cigarette smoking that happened, but I totally forgot what it was. And then when she got destroyed by the wolf, it was a little bit off-putting.
It was fantastic.
Just saying.
So Carol starts off this whole sequence by putting a casserole in the oven, and then sets an egg timer, which goes off at the end of the episode, which shows us that this whole thing takes 45 minutes, which is actually kind of a long time. Which
for
also,
all this to unfold, yeah, true.
Which also suggests that a lot of Alexandrians are dead by the end of the episode, and we see a lot of bodies, but as we keep saying, we're not sure how many people live there. We thought it was only like less than 20.
I think they keep it mysterious for a reason. They have to, kind of.
For TV story writing reasons, it's in their best interest to let us think that there's some sort of inexhaustible number of Alexandrians.
Also, for budget purposes, it's in their best interest not to have identifiable, like, large groups of people, right?
That way you can trot out an Ethan Embry every few episodes and be like, hey,
I was in the work crew.
I have words to say. Whereas most of the nameless, faceless Alexandrians just run around corners and get speared in the chest by a wolf.
True.
So that's a lot of what happens in this episode. We see a lot of hapless Alexandrians get murdered and chopped up into pieces. Can
we also talk about the really bad safe room that we saw? Slats, do not make a safe room. Can we just say...
The ongoing saga of the Jesse, Sam, Ron, and Rip Pete family. We just wish they would all go away.
Yes, we do. This saga begins with Jesse's attempt to get Ron to speak by saying that she set up his hair-cutting chair, which involves a chair with a towel over it, and she has it all set up. I don't know about you, Stuart, but I don't know. If my mom set up a hair-cutting chair, I would definitely be running in the other direction if I was Ron's age, but, maybe that's just me.
I mean, my mom was never a hairdresser, whereas Jesse was, so... And Ron's rocking his beanie right now. He doesn't need any kind of hair tips.
He can keep that hair underneath that little cap for a while. Mm-hmm. It's going to protect him from any judgment.
He'll be fine. And there's only one girl in the whole world, so...
Right, only Enid.
Enid's it. But yeah, so Jesse tries but fails, but does succeed in setting up that there's a pair of scissors on the kitchen island.
True.
That is all that we need out of that.
That may be the whole purpose of this whole scene, even though it seems completely implausible.
Because later on we see her pleading with Sam, the most cowardly boy with the bowl haircut, to try and hide, and they end up both hiding in a terrible closet.
Right. With slats. Slats, people. Slats is not a safe room, so even if there is like a deadbolt on that door, that's not going to save you from the wolves. So apparently in this situation it did, because they didn't sort of go further into it.
The worst of all the wolves was who was invading the Jesse, Sam, Ron house.
You mean the culotte wolf?
The wolf who wears culottes. Yes. The wolves,
femme wolf.
The wolves are kind of an interesting mixed bag. Some of them look really scary and terrifying and badass. Like the guy with the spear, who we never see again.
He's pretty scary. He's scary.
He's a big guy. The guy with the axe, we do see in a couple scenes, and we see him get dispatched. He's a pretty terrifying person. There's a lot of them. It seems we see about a dozen, I think. Maybe there's more.
And then the wolves. So there are some wolves that definitely look like they belong in Mad Max. They definitely have some weaponry and some cool stuff going on. But there's other wolves that just seem kind of more out of the gutter punk era. They don't really
What's
have
a gutter punk?
Gutter punks. They sit down. They beg for money. They're wearing some Peruvian togs, but they don't necessarily really need your money.
Okay.
Gutter punks.
Yeah.
Cambridge, Massachusetts. Probably just a term that goes for Cambridge, maybe.
No, I can see that working out here too. But yeah, it's a weird group of people who also seem to have a driving philosophy that goes beyond just dogma into some sort of they're like the worst kind of cult you can imagine.
Yeah.
We're saving you, we're freeing you, we're just killing you to do it.
We have clean lips.
They have very clean lips, but dirty everything else.
Why is that? Do they actually clean the lips? Question.
I assume that, that's just licking. Yes, I don't know. This episode, it's a 45-minute episode. I don't recall who's directing. Seth, someone.
Seth. We talked about this because he produced it as well.
Yeah.
One moment.
He wrote it and produced it. It's not, however, the dream team, but it's people who are intimately connected with the show.
Seth Hoffman.
Seth Hoffman wrote and was a producer.
Yes.
And then, was it a lady who directed it?
It was Jessica Lynch.
Yes. But, so a lot of this episode is action, which makes it kind of difficult to break down and parse out. It's just... But one of the interesting things that happens in this episode, and we kind of referred to their interaction in the premiere, is we have Carol and Morgan kind of facing off with their philosophies are at odds, where she's like, kill them all, like God sorted them out, and Morgan is like, well, no, we have to save all life is precious. I don't think he's actually got into his motto yet, but he's definitely living by those words still.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So he's trying to preserve life, and she is just like TCB, taking care of business. She's got her, she dresses up like one of them. She puts the W on her face.
Really quickly, which is pretty impressive given that she's only seen them in action for 5 seconds. But she does a good job at just blending into the whole wolf lifestyle.
Yeah, and we're led to believe that this is just her doing her thing. But she also has some moments later on in the episode where we're like, oh, wow, she's not doing so well. And when Morgan is appealing to her nature, saying, hey, you don't like killing, you shouldn't kill, then we're kind of also... led to believe maybe he's right. Maybe she's not into it. Maybe she can't hack it. But then she's only been this badass for 2 seasons on the show. She was kind of a lightweight before that.
Yeah, and a beaten housewife. So we see a little bit of her soft, tender underbelly come out in this, where she kind of sees her friends that she's been faking with, honestly. They don't know what kind of person she actually is in this episode. She's trading recipes with them, and then sees them gutted and is weeping over them. She has to pull a little bit of a...
She doesn't really even like them, though. I mean, those 2 ladies who she's in the supply room with?
Well, she doesn't like them, but I kind of feel like Carol is a little bit of a... I mean, this is sort of the life that she... Part of why she doesn't like them is that they're representative of what she was before. And she ends up having to kill one of them very similarly to what Rick has to do to Carter, because her friend's just kind of screaming bloody murder and she has to get rid of her so that she doesn't die.
It's a very similar scene
I mean,
to
it's...
Rick putting a knife in Carter's head. She puts a knife in this other lady's head.
Do you feel like it was a little bit too on the nose? Because I did. I thought it was a little bit too much myself.
I feel like it only really stands out when you watch these 2 episodes back to back.
Maybe.
And they weren't designed to be watched that way necessarily. But it's clearly they do exactly the same thing, except the Rick putting Carter to sleep scene is more disturbing because Rick's face is all veiny and
he's got the butterfly strips.
Covered in Band-Aids.
Hey, but she's got like the little cowl on her head. She's got the blood W on her face.
Not yet. That was before she got dressed.
Yeah.
She's still wearing her floral sweater, and she puts a knife in the back of her friend's head. It's disturbing, and later on, I feel like she pays the price for how it's gone. Their idyllic little life. As short a time as they've been there, I think it's hard for Rick's group to admit, even though they knew it was like there was a chance that this would happen, especially after the whole termite thing. They knew that this was coming down the road. It's still tough because there's just bodies everywhere. This whole episode just kills off a good dozen more Alexandrians we never knew existed, whose faces we never even get to see in some cases.
True. And then we also have the whole drama going on in the infirmary with Denise.
Yeah, we meet Denise for the first time ever.
Yep.
Denise's character is introduced. Another Alexandrian we had no idea was there.
But has amazing skills as a doctor.
Well,
not amazing.
She's a psychiatrist, as it turns out. I didn't remember that she was a psychiatrist.
I didn't either.
It makes more sense given some of her scenes later on in the show, where she's extolling people's virtues and values. It's kind of ironic. But so she's like, I'm the new doctor. I have to learn how to be a doctor. And we have scenes of Tara like cheering her on. A little foreshadowing there too.
Yeah, they're both wearing like
a little too much makeup.
No, there's a lot of lipstick going on that was never present before, and it's a little too on the nose in my opinion. You don't need to oversell it, folks, and they definitely were in this case. Yeah. I think we noticed it a little bit more because we know what's going to happen, but it was very noticeable that both of them were wearing it, and Tara especially, who never ever wore it before this particular episode, from what I can remember.
Yeah, she's like a tomboy. She doesn't wear makeup, right? Like her whole thing is giving people fist bumps.
And somehow in the middle of Alexandria, she discovers Kiss Kiss Bang Bang Marc Jacobs, which is actually a lipstick color.
Perfect. So, yeah, this episode is just kind of fun to watch. But ultimately, by the end of it, you're like, okay, so everybody's out chasing this herd of zombies or trying to get them to not hit Alexandria. In the meantime, Alexandria just lost half of its population, maybe more. We don't know. None of our heroes were killed.
Nope.
Not even Deanna or Spencer, who are not heroes, but major Alexandrians.
Also, tip of the hat to whoever did Deanna's makeup, because she was looking pretty rough.
She's looking skeletal and miserable. And
as you would imagine if you lost your life partner.
Life partner and one of her sons.
Yep.
In the same
She's having
days.
a rough time.
Yeah. But we get to see where the air horn is coming from that we heard at the end of last episode.
Yep. Coming from a semi, folks.
It makes it seem like they managed to turn it off pretty quickly.
But it went on for a really long time in the last episode, didn't it?
It's like 30 seconds to a minute. Maybe that's what it was in this too. But they turned it off fairly fast, and Michonne is talking about how far away it is. So I don't know. Like, are they still at risk of this herd getting done? We don't know because the damn thing was never shown. Like, we still don't know what's happening. In a way, yeah, sure, that's a good kind of cliffhanger, off-screen cliffhanger for episode 3. We don't know what's coming down the road. The wolves seem to have pulled back. They're running away. Morgan and Carol single-handedly have defeated all of the wolves. Rosita and Aaron also got stuck in a little bit, but it was definitely mostly Carol. And Morgan.
And they are diametrically opposed, obviously, and they showed that much. I feel like they do this a little too much, but they just showed it in a way, they're walking toward each other on the street. They go the opposite direction, very much in your face. And I think you kind of can get it without this, like, visual, but it was done in a way to make it really clear that they are in different camps.
And so when I said earlier that their relationship, their story arc together is one of the more interesting ones, I don't necessarily love this part where they're throwing so much into each other's faces.
Yeah.
Because Carol is supposed to be a pragmatist, and I guess that's kind of what she is putting out there. That's kind of her thing. Morgan is more of a pie-in-the-sky sort of optimist about humanity. But it's still, on some level, I'm not convinced that they would be already so in each other's faces or bumping off of each other.
I also was a little bit bothered by the whole, I know that what they're trying to do with Morgan, they're trying to make him moral, that he doesn't take life. And he has this thing with the wolves, and he gives them a chance, and he just kind of like says, leave, because they're going to kill you. And he has this sense of preservation where he wants to keep people alive, but I don't know that he would necessarily really do that. I mean, we saw him in the last episode, or not last episode, but when he was introduced and we saw his first interaction with the wolves, he wasn't exactly, he wasn't the kindest of humans. I mean, he basically was leading the walkers to the wolves that he had basically left unconscious. So
I agree. So by the end of this episode, we are still kind of unresolved, which is part of my ongoing and growing problem with this season. We started with this amazing set piece, which was unresolved, and now we have this invasion of Alexandria that ends because the timer goes off. We know that it's over, but it's still unresolved. We don't know, like, we saw several of the wolves leaving. We still have what we think is a horde of zombies approaching Alexandria. But what's going to happen next? We don't know. And, golly, that's frustrating.
It is. But that's, I'll be full disclosure, this was not my favorite season of The Walking Dead. I remember watching these first episodes and being a little bit puzzled about where they were going with it. And
one hint. See, episode 3 of this season is called Thank You. Do you remember?
No, I don't. I admit. Maybe I blocked it out.
You probably did because, we'll get to that in the next time we talk about this season of The Walking Dead. But thank you are some famous last words on this show.
Yeah, now I remember. Okay, yep.
All right, so season 6 off to probably a good start, frankly. Like the big set piece, and then a second big set piece with the invasion of Alexandria by the walkers, by the wolves, rather. These are 2 great episodes, but thematically, I'm already starting to have problems with them. Is all I'm really getting at. It's like I like where they're going. I like the energy that they've come at it with. But then the fact that we have like 2 kind of parallel and yet both unresolved storylines in 2 episodes of the show in an hour and 45 minutes of television.
True.
I'm like, gosh, this doesn't quite feel like it's going anywhere in a hurry.
Right. It does feel a little soap opera-y. That's true. Just a bit.
Yes. Certainly in the first episode when person after person walks into the sick bay, or whatever, not sick bay, that's a Star Trek term, into the hospital room, and Tara's sitting up in bed and they're like, good grief, Tara! Like one after another. I'm like, all right, let's just tone it down a little bit, guys.
All right.
Anyway, so I guess that's episodes 1 and 2, season 6.
It is. I'll admit, it's been hard recording here, seeing you in person.
We're not used to seeing one another. We like to look out the window when each other are talking and kind of zoning out. So now we have to pay attention a lot more.
I know. It's terrible. It's so disconcerting. But it's been fun, absolutely.
Yeah. As always, you guys can reach us on Twitter at Reanimated PCast, on Gmail at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and on our website at reanimatedpodcast.com.
Twitters.
Did I say? I thought I said Twitter. That was the first thing I said. Next time, we're just going to continue along with this review process. We might do 2 or 3 episodes next time, depending on how much time elapses between now and when we're able to get back to the podcast.
I can probably watch some episodes on my flight back this time.
It's like a 17-hour flight. I mean, would have thought. So next time you check in with us, we'll have some more episodes of season 6 to talk about. For frequent listeners of Reanimated, you might know that we think that this was a pretty shitty season of Walking Dead. But
we've alluded to this a few times, actually, like when we talk about other seasons. So yeah, I think people know we're trying really hard to be positive
and objective.
It's impossible, truly.
Fair and balanced is not our motto, but we like zombies. So we will get back on the wagon again next time. Again, thank you to Beer for bringing us this episode of Reanimated. And from me, Stuart, thanks for listening.
And HA, I guess. Ciao.
That's our new sign-off.